why do you need adversity to be great? Say hello to my wife. I'm having what's known as a wardrobe malfunction. She is cutting my hair. This has been a dream of hers.
You've endeared me to your millions of viewers.
To humiliate me on the air.
I always cry even though it isn't allowed. So proud.
You make me want to be a better streamer.
A better screamer.
No, definitely not that. Do you need adversity to be great?
Your skill is you tee up your guests and you make them look, so good.
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. Gets me all fired up, man. Such a good interviewer. I'm ready to go. Jump to the screen. But no, so true.
They can't see I'm dancing by myself.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
Well, welcome to CoronaTV. It is Thursday, June something. I'm not even going to look up because then you see my eyes looking up. Oh, I'll look up. June 25th. How could I not remember the date? Yesterday, of course, was my son Jack's birthday. He enjoyed all the shout outs. Thank you to all of you for his birthday. We had a good time. We actually went to a restaurant. First time back at a restaurant in 3.5 months. And I'm not going to lie, I felt really uncomfortable. It was very awkward for me initially to do that. But after the first martini and then a glass of wine, I was relaxed. A piece of bread fell on the floor. I leaned over. I forgot about social distancing. I mean, that's, I guess, in all seriousness, part of the problem. But all the rules were met, and people were respecting the mask. Connecticut is doing pretty well right now from a national standpoint. But I have to tell you, it's a weird feeling completely. When a waiter comes, he's wearing a mask, but he doesn't have gloves on his hand, but he puts a glass down of water. I'm thinking, should I even touch that water? I just felt a little strange. But as I said, alcohol definitely helped. Alcohol in your hands, the Purell, and also alcohol down there helped a lot. I don't think I would have gone to a restaurant unless it was a special occasion. And I don't know that I would run back, but at the same time, I'm not sure that I'm as scared as I was in the past. So today, I'll tell you what I am scared about. I'm scared of Andrew Keen because he is a contrarian. He is my arch nemesis, always many people's nemesis, and he might just be the Antichrist. We don't know. But you are not going to meet many people that have as powerful a voice with a stronger conviction. And I think he might just be using his powers now for good. He may have come over to the light side. We'll just have to talk to him and find out firsthand what he's up to. As far as you guys are concerned, thank you. As always, every day, I thank you for your likes, your comments, your shares, your subscribes, but most of all for watching, most of all for taking an hour or half an hour of your time and committing it to me and to us, right, and to my guests. And you will not be disappointed today. Today, ironically, is believe it or not, ironic, I know, National Handshake Day. Maybe they should rename this National Elbow Day. But wow, everything has changed. Everything has changed. You are not wrong, Mr. Bob Farnham. Everything has changed. And Steve Garfield asked, did the internet kill our culture? Well, don't jump the gun. We'll find out when we talk to Andrew. Quick shout out of birthdays. Not many people today on Facebook or LinkedIn that are celebrating birthdays. I did come across a LinkedIn connection of mine, Dan Coates. Not really sure that is the Dan Coates, the famous Dan Coates, or maybe the other guy's the famous Dan Coates, who knows? The infamous Dan Coates, but happy birthday to you nonetheless. Well, in today's Seated Soliloquy, which, as you know, if you are a regular to the show, is connected in some way, shape, or form to my guest, is about disagreement. It's about debate and discourse, disagreement, the power of being a contrarian, so to speak. And of course, it is inspired by my guest, by Mr. Andrew Keen. Contrarians unite. No, they don't. Yes, they do. You know, when I wrote Join the Conversation back in 2007, I defined conversation as between two or more sides as opposed to two or more people. I don't get it. Isn't that the same thing? No, it isn't. Remember the saying, what's the sound of one hand clapping? Well, you're listening to it right now. We live in a hyper-partisan world that has created unnatural and unnecessary divisions, more like chasms between us. We've become contrarians without a cause, or more likely contrarians without a clue. Our points of view are shaped by the parties we support. And as soon as the wind shifts, we are now on the receiving end of the outrage du jour. And what do? We reverse our position. Well, that, my friends, is called hypocrisy. What we need less of is reinforcing a pre-existing, ingrained, or immovable bias or belief. And what we need more of is intelligent, respectful, and constructive dialogue between diverse and different points of view. We need the skill to listen deeply and seek the truth at all costs. Every idea or perspective has a semblance of truth in it. And sometimes it's really, really, really small, but our mission is to pursue it like a pig pursues truffles. And that was a little hat tip or an apology to David Ogilvy. Call it the 10th man principle, as highlighted in World War Z, or embracing your heresy, as I wrote in Built to Suck. Simply put, the ability to disagree and then debate is not devil's advocate, it's the opposite, it's divine. When two sides of an argument come together with a common purpose, which is to seek common ground, the sound that emerges from this unlikely and sometimes uncomfortable union is not a cacophony of noise, but rather a symphony of compromise, partnership, and almost always the opportunity to move the entire conversation forward and effect real action and meaningful change. Well, I think about those words a lot when I think about my guest. And as you can see, he is not, in fact, you know, all of those labels that I gave him. Let me tell you what he is, or maybe some of his interesting accolades. I don't have to ask him the 3 things you might not know about him, because I just found out something. He was named as one of the 100 most connected men by GQ magazine. He is a bit debonair. Andrew Keen is amongst the world's most known and controversial commentators on the digital revolution. He's written 5 books, including the best-selling Cult of the Amateur, The Internet is Not the Answer, and How to Fix the Future. He directed and wrote the 2020 movie, How to Fix Democracy, and he is the host of the popular podcast show, Keen On. Current interests include the future of work, the future of the earth, and the future of humanity. One might actually be able to say that Andrew Keen is a futurist. Let's ask him. Andrew, welcome to the show. I did not expect that.
I'm your waiter.
You are. So you can hand me a glass of water, and I can only hope that you didn't spit on it.
I would never spit on anything for you, Joe. Yeah, well, that was the most generous introduction. What are you selling me here?
I am selling you absolutely nothing. Although I have to tell you that that I'm just excited to see you. I'm gonna ask you many questions today and quizzes. I'm gonna quiz you.
Good.
The first question is, do you remember where we met?
I do, and it's very rare because I never remember anything. We met in Helsinki. You and I, we were surrounded with drunk Finns.
Drunk Finns.
And I always tell I don't know if it was a story with you, but I remember doing a speech in Helsinki. And as you suggested, I have a history of being a troublemaker, polemicist. And this was in the glory days of Web 2.0, when everyone was talking about the democratization of the internet and blah, blah, and how it was going to change everything for the better. And we were doing a speech in Helsinki, and I got up early, and I must have had jet lag because I came over from California. I was in a particularly bad mood, so I thought to myself, I'm going to really be offensive to this audience in Finland. And so we showed up at the venue, and it was about 50% full. But as so differently in Finland from the rest of the world, half of the venue was completely empty, and it was the front half. And all the Finns, because they're so shy, sat at the back. And I remember giving the most outrageous speech. I mean, particularly obnoxious. And no one said anything. And then in the event in the evening, they all got drunk, and we had very good conversations. So I do remember that Helsinki venue, and I do love Helsinki. I think it's one of the best towns. I always think of it as Russia without the Russians. Beautiful Russian architecture, but none of the obnoxiousness of Russian people.
Yeah, I've spoken in Helsinki 3 or 4 times. Amazing place, amazing country. I have various anecdotes. I do remember the one, I think the first time I arrived there, I said, I'm in Helsinki and I've got the afternoon free. What should I do? And their answer was take the ferry to Tallinn. And I was like, that is not a good ad for your country and your city when you're telling me to go to another country. But I found out what's interesting about that is because there's an alcohol buying. First of all, I mean, again, they like to get drunk. I think they go into Tallinn and they buy alcohol and they bring it back, or they drink it on the ferry, or, you know, interesting people, the Finns.
Yeah, and I don't think that's fair about the Tallinn thing. I mean, it's interesting to get the Tallinn ferry. I've done it the other way, actually, going from Tallinn to Helsinki, because my last book, How to Fix the Future, I had a chapter on Estonia and a little bit about Finland. But there are some beautiful islands just outside Helsinki. So the ferry, you know, from half an hour from Helsinki, you have some really... It's really one of the most beautiful towns, I think, and especially in the summer when obviously the weather is so much better. So yeah, I would strongly recommend anyone to go. And did we do a debate? Was that, I think, something like that?
No, I don't think it was you versus me, but I will say that I remember being somewhat apprehensive and nervous to meet you, because, you know, you've written this book, The Cult of the Amateur. You know, I don't know whether you had attacked me or directly, indirectly, as a Web 2.0 booster, and I think I came ready to fight, but instead I just ended up loving you, and we had a great time together. And I think, you know, in that is such a lesson, right? Which is when you might think you know someone, and when you take the time to get to know them, it's very hard. It's really hard not to like someone that is smart, intelligent, respectful, you know, and where you can just have that debate. And that's why I wrote the monologue in your honor.
So is the smart, intelligent, good-looking bit, is that you or me? Or both?
No, I was talking about myself, obviously, you know. So let me just show you a few things of people that have been commenting. Steve said he's excited to see you and especially to talk to you on the after show. This is gonna be big. Well, it already is big. And Stavros says he's a big fan of yours.
Wow.
And you know, Rob Norman, who
oh my God, is Rob on the call?
He's watching. Maybe he'll come to the after show. Now, when he says Coys, does that mean you're a Spurs fan?
Yeah, I was in Madrid.
Oh, no way. No way. I
was there. I was there with my daughter. It was just over a year ago. It's incredible how things change. Yeah, with Spurs and everything else.
I tried to go, but disappeared into thin air.
Yeah, Rob and I have had many Spurs conversations. In fact, I remember once we did something in India together, and we were walking around. We both had Spurs caps. I'll get my Spurs cap for this, actually, since Rob's there. I need to honor him. Hold on.
All right. Well, we're going to do something that I've never done on the show before, which is both host and guest are going to disappear for a moment. And yeah, well, you get that. I'm just glad I didn't trip.
Army.
And this was my gift from my wife for my 40th, which was a signed Champions League football when Spurs just got back into Europe. And sadly, it looks like we might be skipping Europe next season. But you know, who knew that we were going to talk about Spurs the whole time? So you can keep that cap on. I was trying to think of like, how do I position Andrew Keen? So I thought, do I just introduce you as the Contrarian, the Nemesis, or the Antichrist? And then I thought, you know what? There's a much better comparison, which is for sure, Andrew Keen is the Simon Cowell, of our space. But one of these men is good looking, and one of them is Simon Cowell. But anyway, we'll keep we'll keep moving on.
Good. Yeah, I don't think I was quite as obnoxious as him, or as rich or successful. So maybe one day when I grow up.
Maybe they're all connected. Tim on YouTube says, does everything have to be opposite with Keen? You have virtual background, he does not. You have in-ear mic, he has handheld. But no, it doesn't, because we both support Spurs. So there's the answer as well. So should we get away from Spurs talk for a second? Although maybe we'll do a separate show where we just talk about Jose and whether we exactly, or maybe we won't.
Maybe you can get Potch on the show, and then we can do a real God show.
You think he's ever going to come back to us?
Well, my daughter and I fantasize about it. I think Mourinho will be done by next year because he's so annoying and miserable. And I don't know. Depends. You need to get Uncle Daniel Levy on the show. He's the one we have to convince.
Pitching him as we speak. All right, so we're going to move on to a few other knickknacks, and then we're going to get into the meat of the stuff. So I had to ask you, when you go to Andrew Keen, this is what you find. And my question to you is, what's going on at andrewkeen.com?
Yeah, well, what's going on at andrewkeen.com is I don't own it. So it's ajkeen.com.
Yeah, I know. So there is interesting stuff. There was a patchy stuff and incorrect premises. I was just wondering if maybe it was some secretive website only for the smart or the initiated.
No, I don't own andrewkeen.com. I think somebody else does. I think there must be another Andrew Keen somewhere. So that's not mine.
Have you ever tried to contact them or buy it?
No, I think AJ Keen is enough.
Yeah, well, that's how I know you. And how I know you as well is from certainly the first book. I mean, I'm trying to work out, when we think about the internet is not the answer or the cult of the amateur, who's going to apologize to whom today? Are you going to apologize to me because you were wrong about the cult of the amateur and the internet is not the answer? Or in fact, am I apologizing to you?
I was obviously wrong. It's obvious now that the internet has been enormously successful. It's enriched democracy. It's created an enormously wise citizenship who are respectful and responsible and who are learning more and more about the world every time they go online. So the apology is mine. I was totally wrong about all that stuff.
Wait, did I detect just a little bit of sarcasm? Just a smidgen?
Just a smidgen, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the interesting thing, obviously, when you railed against Web 2.0, I'll read you a quote from Cult of the Amateur, and this is on the Wikipedia page for Cult of the Amateur, which was really an epic, seminal book. And you might have been the only person coming out with a contrarian point of view and a diverse point of view. And for that, I think many people were grateful because you got people thinking at a minimum. And I'll read it quickly. Most of the content being shared, no matter how many times it has been linked, cross-linked, annotated, and copied, was composed or written by someone from the sweat of their creative brow and the disciplined use of their talent. I think right now, I think on so many levels, to the decline of journalism, to the rise of fake news, to the fact that people are sharing and spreading untruths without even thinking about who wrote them and why they were written. And on that, and if for no other reason, and if for only that, it is I that should be apologizing to you, saying I was wrong, because I've been advocating for journalists, for real journalists, somehow to rise up again, and for us to be able to trust them and trust in them and trust them to help us discern, what is real and what is fake.
Yeah, well, I know I had that debate for years. And as you say, at first I was positioned as the guy who didn't get it. People said to me, oh, you just don't understand. I had arguments with everyone, you know, from Jimmy Wales to the Google and Facebook people. But I do think that my argument now is it's got a bit boring, which is why I don't make it really anymore, is that everyone now essentially agrees that the internet has in fact destroyed our culture. It's killed our culture. It doesn't mean that it's been exclusively bad. We all know that as well. But it hasn't created what you guys would call a viable ecosystem. It hasn't created a new economy for creatives. You know, Rob's on this. I'm amazed he's listening to this, but he knows better than anyone. The WPP guys understood how destructive this was, even though they're in the advertising business. Martin Sorrell was one of the very few people, actually, when the book came out in 2007, who was on my side because he understood how destructive it is. And it's only become more destructive. What are the numbers now? I mean, Rob knows this better than I do. I think 70% of all advertising on the web comes through either Facebook or Google, and it's only getting more. So they have more and more of a stranglehold on the creative industry. It's harder and harder to make a living. And so, yeah, the consequences have been generally dire, disastrous.
You know, one of those consequences has actually been an interesting impact. And I don't know what the latest data is, but the latest data is kind of irrelevant when you think of now all of us operating during COVID. But there were some very alarming and starting, and I did reference this actually, even though I spoke about the entrepreneurial revolution in Built to Suck. I noticed that there's been a precipitous decline in the number of new startups and the number of new, even small businesses. And that isn't a coincidence. It is because of the big five that have become so big, so obtuse and so powerful that the little guy doesn't really have a chance. And wasn't that the original promise of the internet, right? To level the playing fields and allow David to slay Goliath. It's ironic that the Goliath that came out of it actually was created by the internet.
Right. And again, it was something, I'm not saying I was the only person to predict this, but, you know, when you heard, even in 2007, when you heard the Google guys or even the Facebook guys talking about democratizing the internet and flattening and creating equal opportunity, it was so, at least in my mind, self-evidently hypocritical. I remember the narrative to Cult of the Amateur began at a FOO camp, Friends of O'Reilly camp, in which all these guys congregated in Sebastopol in California, just north of San Francisco, to congratulate themselves on democratizing the internet and democratizing culture, when in fact they were just making huge wealth. Now, Tim O'Reilly, who organizes that, when the book came out, he was very, very angry. He didn't speak to me for years, but now we've become friends. And I think coming back to your monologue at first about people who didn't agree sharing views, I think Tim O'Reilly is another good example of someone who acknowledges in some ways that they were wrong and now is doing extremely good work.
I didn't acknowledge I was wrong, but I mean, I am in hell and hell has frozen over, but no, but I think, you know, part of this is about maturation, right? You grow up, you learn from perspective, you realize, certainly I did, my own learning came from the fact that when I seized a certain amount of power early on with this voice, I didn't really know how to use or control that voice, or sometimes be respectful with that voice.
No, you're flailing around for excuses. No excuses here. You were wrong. Admit it publicly. Tell the world you were wrong.
I can only tell you where you and I were right, which is no. I think, look, I think what has happened is that we've learned that, and we're learning it again now, that extremes never work, and absolutes don't work. You know, one of the things that's come out of this, look, I'm older, I'm wiser, I'm a little bit more knowledgeable. But I think for example, the ability to reject a point of view without looking for the truth and trying to understand it and finding the compromise, that's tremendous growth. I don't know if it's just inside me or other people. I would hope it's in other people as well. I still believe in in the hope and the positivity and the potential of the internet and the internet done right. But I'm disillusioned, especially with so much of social media, for the damage and destruction that it has caused on so many levels. And I would say I'm trying to fix it, but the thing is, I think we have bigger fish to fry, right, Andrew, and bigger things to fix. And in a way, like I said to you, but you've changed. You're not lambasting the internet and Web 2.0 and social media. You've almost pivoted yourself, and you even said, like, I kind of got bored of that old stuff. That's what we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about today. And that's why hell is frozen over, because that's where you and I are in lockstep.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not so much bored with it, but I'm eating my own dog food. I talked about the importance of curation, the importance of creating high quality content and the importance of accountability. So what I've done over the last few years is gone into the business one way or the other of creating that content. And I'm not anonymous, and I don't hide behind trolls, and I'm not really that obsessed with putting the message out on social media. I don't have a Facebook account. I don't have an Instagram account. I'm lucky enough to have very credible corporate or nonprofit sponsors who support me. What I've done, which I think is interesting for creators, is I found alternative business models, because the traditional business model clearly doesn't work anymore. You can't make a living, really, unless you're incredibly lucky or talented working for the New York Times or the Washington Post. So the old model doesn't work. And where I think I was wrong, and I think my life shows this, is that one can make a living through digital businesses, but it still requires a lot of entrepreneurial persistence. And the old infrastructure doesn't work anymore. The old idea, I mean, my daughter who's just going to college has sometimes says to me, oh, wouldn't it be fun to be a journalist? And I look at her without trying to be too dismissive or father-like and say, no, it wouldn't, because you can't be a journalist anymore because the business model doesn't exist. So I'd encourage you to do many things, but journalism isn't one of them. Even though the principle of journalism is honorable and important, the economy has been destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's hard to build on top of that. But the one thing that I did want to pick up on and touch on is, which I think is an important point, is that it's this hybrid model, right? You can, by applying that entrepreneurial flair and lens and balancing it with that professional lens, there's an interesting compromise. I mean, even if you look at what's possible now, what this CoronaTV environment is, the things that we can do. I never touched streaming before. I never touched video. It was too hard, too difficult. I'm doing this, and now I'm doing this, and it's a lot of work, but the work is value-added work. It's not grunt work in terms of slaving for 4 hours just to be able to edit a piece of video down. So I think that point is taken. By the way, I play a game always. The second element of the quiz is I find a quote that is, again, connected to my guest or the subject matter, and I ask them if they know who said it, and generally they're not meant to get it, so don't feel bad if you don't. To be a contrarian, you've got to be a contrarian against your own people. I love that quote. And that was said by, you either know it or you don't. You shouldn't know it. The attempt is not for you to know it. That was actually James Carville. Or Carville. Oh, James.
Carville, yeah. I can see him saying. I was going to say Churchill because he usually says most of these quotes, but I think that's true, and I'm very uncomfortable, sort of in the self-congratulatory anti-internet camp, because it's boring, and it's just as annoying as the pro Web 2.0 camp. So I'm, in Yiddish, and there'll be I hope there are lots of Jews. I hope you only allow Jews on this show and in the audience, there's a Yiddish word which my family always used to refer to me as, which is a dafka, which means
contrarian.
Yeah, which is the Yiddish for contrarian. So Jews are very good at that. I guess we've had to be over the years, given the consequences of not being a contrarian. So good Dufkers are ones who are just as uncomfortable agreeing with fellow Dufkers as popping the conventions.
So now that anyone who's not Jewish has basically decided never to watch my show again, you've really doubled down on the Yid army. So thank you, Andrew, for destroying my entire.
You probably don't have any non-Jewish people in the audience, do you? Do you check?
I check. In fact, just hang on a second. If you are not Jewish and you're watching, please comment so that Andrew can actually see that there is a diverse audience. And look, you've insulted non-Jews, you've insulted social media people. Who else are you going to insult today, Andrew?
Well, we haven't even talked about the Arsenal, have we?
Well, I mean, we pity that. I think the joke with respect to Arsenal would be that they have an unfair advantage in the season run-in because, of course, they're playing to empty stadiums, which is pretty much what they would call Saturday.
Yeah,
so
in my household, they're known as Al-Qaeda, so you can imagine.
There you go. Non-Jews are watching me.
Oh,
so,
no.
So, screw you, Andrew, trying to destroy my media empire before it begins. All right, let's and Steve has just explained Dufka, just to annoy, just to be contrary,
Where's that from? Is that from the Yiddish?
I don't know. It's from the Yiddish urban dictionary. So David says Arsenal are up 1. Well, not for long. And Tim, thank you, Tim. Christians for Jaffe. Let that hashtag trend. All right. And Andrew, enough of your Dufka shenanigans. Let's talk about 3 important topics or a combination thereof. This is really
what. 1 second. I just have to one thing. Are you okay? Okay. I've got someone setting up my own. I want to be like you when I grow up, so I'm setting up a home studio. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost, holding the mic is fine. It's actually good. You're the first person to do that. But there is a mic. Well, I'll give you some tips. Some things that
I have to. My video studio is actually currently being redesigned by my producer. So I'm actually the rig I'm on now is my podcast thing. So people usually don't see this. So this is how I do my podcast, which is just audio.
And I'll give you there's a little full screen version of Mr. Andrew Keene. He's got his mask. He's got his first cap.
And there's my look at that. That's very high end stuff. So I am actually better than I look, which isn't hard.
Well, now you can be better than you sound, or maybe sound better than you are, because I want to talk about what you really are focused on, and I actually think and obviously get your unique take on this, Andrew. The first is, and when I said, hey, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, wait, I thought he was going to beat up on social media. But no, the first is this idea of how to fix democracy. And it's not just a topic. It's not just an article, a headline or link baiting article. It's something that you've put a lot of time and effort and energy and resources in. So maybe I'll turn it over to you and set this up in terms of what do you mean by how to fix democracy and what are you doing about it? And maybe you can talk about, the movie, obviously.
Thank you. Well, over the last couple of years, in association with the Bertelsmann Foundation in DC, the U.S. Bertelsmann Foundation, I've been making a series of videos, interviews all over the world about the current crisis of democracy, the challenge of authoritarianism, the undermining of democratic norms and cultures. And people can check it out on howtofixdemocracy.org. And we've interviewed an enormous amount of people. Madeleine Albright, for example, Michael Ignatieff in Budapest, lots of people in Europe, on the East and the West Coast. And it's really turned into, I think, a very interesting series. The focus on the current series is on the relationship between capitalism and democracy and the way we need to reform capitalism in order to strengthen democracy. And given the rise of authoritarian nationalism around the world, from Bolsonaro to Duterte to Maria Ressa, by the way, the very brave Philippines journalist who now is under assault from Duterte in Philippines. She was on the show. Obviously Trump, Orban in Hungary, the Brexit people in the UK. So it's an interview series, and I've just finished a movie, a 60-minute movie, which is actually launching tomorrow. We're having a live event at 2 p.m. Eastern. So maybe you can put the link up, but people are welcome. And if you sign up for the event, it's a conversation I'm having with Leon Botstein, who's the president of Bard University, Rebecca Henderson, who teaches at Harvard, and Earl Lewis, who's a very distinguished African-American historian, about nationalism. No, that's not the one. That one is I've got a debate tomorrow. It's just a kind of a funny coincidence that tomorrow at 8:15 in the morning, I'm with Elif Shafak, the Turkish writer. We're doing debate about nationalism on Intelligence Squared. And then at 11, we're doing this event, a live event. And if you sign up for it, and if you put the link up, and you can email me, a.keen@me.com if you want the link, you'll be able to get into the Zoom conversation, but you'll also get sent access to the movie itself. So I've really spent the last couple of years working both on the interviews and the movie. The Bertelsmann people said to me,
Is that the one? Is that the corrected one?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's the corrected one.
So I'll leave that up as well. So you're doing a lot tomorrow. You've got the debate in the morning at 11, and then you've got the discussion in the afternoon, which is at the same time. Thank you for scheduling it at the same time as Corona TV. So you're going to be pulling all of my viewers. That's really, really selfish of you. But more importantly, I can't make it. But I'll try and make the 11 a.m. one. Congratulations, by the way, for the movie.
Yeah, and I don't know if there are any other movie makers out there, but we all think we can write books, we all think we can make movies. And I have to say that they came back to me, we did a year worth of interviews, and then they said to me, oh, why don't you turn it into a movie? And of course, like everybody else, I fancy myself as a Spielberg or a Herzog or something. I thought, wow, easy, I'll make a movie. I've written books, I've done this and that. And making a movie was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's incredibly hard, and I have to tip my cap to real movie makers. It's my version of a movie, which is credible, but it's not, it's not going to win any Oscars. But it's an interesting attempt to knit together a narrative about the problems with democracy and ways of fixing it. So I don't know if you've had movie makers on, but it's a much harder art. And I think that speaks to our earlier conversation. Everyone thinks they can do these things until they actually do them. Making a movie, writing a book, doing music, being a journalist, it all requires enormous expertise. And it's way harder than it looks.
And I think certainly putting in your prototypical 10,000 hours, but I think there's a key difference here, Andrew, which is the difference. I mean, what you're saying is completely right. Going down this journey now, when we were talking about audience and numbers before, I said I made a commitment, and my commitment is 2 years. So in 2 years' time, people can ask me anything. What are my numbers? What am I going to do with it? How am I going to monetize it? Hopefully, many of those things might have been sorted out earlier. But I'm putting my head down and saying, to master this craft, and before I can actually call myself a host or legitimately be able to stand up and say, I've done my time, I've got to do my time. You talk about eating your dog food, and I think maybe going back to Cult of the Amateur, the challenge might have been, it certainly was more arrogance and hubris than anything else, but it was the ability for people to say, hey, listen, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway, but I'm doing it. It. But at least there's a little asterisk saying, hey, amateur in progress.
And I think the best critique of Cult of the Amateur, which is ironic, but best critiques are always ironic, is that I was this supposed defender of professionalism, and the critique of amateurism. But the book itself was incredibly amateurish. I'd never written a book before. I did it in 3 months. It was full of errors. I mean, it was fun and it was entertaining. But it was indeed, and I think that's what annoyed people so much on the internet, is because they saw that I was kind of like them, but I was turning their weapons on themselves. And that made it even more fun. But yeah, so...
that reminds me of a certain quote, right?
Right. But, you know, not only to be you've got to turn your weapons on your own people, not just the arguments. So the best critiques of amateurism are themselves amateur.
Andrew, I wanted to show this clip, and my only reservation for showing this clip is that I'm probably going to get dinged on YouTube for copyright infringement. I'm still trying to work out that part. And then that, let me tell you, figuring out how to edit a YouTube clip will probably take more hours than in the last 3 months. But let me show it to you, and then maybe I'll have you respond to it, because I think it will bring in elements of nationalism, of democracy, and you'll see it should be self-evident.
Ladies and gentlemen of Salem, Virginia, would you please give a warm American welcome to a gentleman who has come all the way from Kazakhstan, and we are honored to have singing our national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, Borat Sakia.
My name is Borat, I come from Kazakhstan. Can I say first, we support your war of terror. May we show our support to our boys in Iraq. May USA kill every single terrorist. May George Bush drink the blood of every single man, woman, and child of Iraq. May you destroy their country so that for the next 1,000 years, not even a single lizard will survive in their deserts. To show our friendship, I now will sing our Kazakh national anthem to the tune of your national anthem. Please stand. Kazakhstan is the greatest country in the world. All other countries are run by little girls. Kazakhstan is #1 exporter of potassium. Other Central Asian countries have inferior potassium. Kazakhstan is the greatest country in the world. All other countries is the home of the gays.
And then of course, the part that I didn't show is that when they're about to kind of take him down, he starts going USA, USA, and they're all cheering with him again. So I thought I would just put the clip out and have you respond, maybe not just to that clip, but this context of putting it all together, right? How to fix democracy, the argument against nationalism, and really offer, if you will, Andrew, some hope, some ideas of what that solution could look like, because things look pretty gloomy at the moment.
No, I love that film. And actually, the best compliment I ever got from one of my critics when one of the books came out, they said, I'm a real life version of Borat, which I thought was a tremendous compliment. That's always, when I grow up, I want to be like that. Of course, another, if Rob's still listening, another North London Jew. So how do we fix democracy? In all seriousness, we have to fix capitalism. We don't have enough time on this in this call to talk about that, but that's increasingly the focus of my work, which is addressing the profound inequalities, the yawning, growing inequalities of our age, particularly economic, but cultural and political. We need to address the internet. The internet is clearly a huge problem, whether it's through regulation, encouraging curated products, making these companies like YouTube and Facebook in particular more accountable, doing away with laws in America which protect these companies supposedly as startups, which is absurd. But I think above all else, we need to innovate. I think the problem with a lot of the defenders of democracy is they're conservative. They want us to return to the 20th century. And I think I end my film, for example, in a section on citizen assemblies, on using interesting new technology to get people as citizens to work together. I've always said this. I think one of the ironies of the digital and the revolution and the digital revolution, like all revolutions, is full of ironies, is it's actually commodified the digital and made the physical more valuable. And one of the things we need to figure out in terms of making democracy more viable in the 21st century is getting people together. And the thing that I focus on in the last part of the film are these citizen assemblies, which are happening now all over the world, which are bringing accountability and expertise and also ordinary citizens to address really complicated and important issues. So the one I talk about in the film, I went to Ireland to do some interviews for this, was the way in which Irish citizen assemblies gave out some really important and interesting advice on the abortion issue in Ireland, which, as you can imagine, is very controversial and very edgy. So we need to move forward. I just did a book called Tomorrow's versus Yesterdays. We need to move towards tomorrow rather than yesterday. And that's the challenge, I think, is we can't fall back on 19th or 20th century democracy or capitalism, for that matter. We need innovation. And that's where I think our community is so important. It's all too easy because of the failure of the first wave of the digital revolution to just kind of reject innovation. That's why maybe as a Dafka, as someone who's always challenging convention, that I think this is the moment when we need to embrace innovation, but to do so in a responsible, coherent way, to enrich curation and accountability, and to build a culture which has great potential. It always had in the digital revolution. It failed dramatically, self-evidently the first time around, but we can get around to it again. And that's why I haven't talked that much about this or even to you, but I'm actually in the early stages of a new project, which is called Now.tv, which is launching a new network, a new television network, focused not on user-generated content, but on expertise. And I think there's huge potential here. So anyone who's interested in that should email me too. And I'm doing it with a group of guys out here because, and I need to talk to Rob about it too, but I think there's a huge potential. There's a huge untapped pool of wisdom now, which the internet offers. Not, Vladimir from Moscow pretending to be Joe from Wisconsin, but real people with real expertise inside and outside the university. The time has come now to pull our socks up, roll our sleeves up, and really fix the world, because it's clearly fucked at the moment.
Well, I mean, that's Andrew Keane at his best. And you know what? It's so funny that you're calling it now.tv or Now TV?
Now.tv. We own the URL now.tv. So we're just starting out. So at the moment, there's not much there, but I've got a team here. So it's my new startup. It's my new thing I'm focusing on.
Well, congratulations on the movie. Congratulations on that. It's something that I've been talking about a lot actually in the last several weeks, which is the need for a new voice or the need for a different voice. It doesn't have to be new, but different, evolved, representing, I mean, it's so ironic that the words I would want to use would be fair and balanced. And that isn't, and by the way...
Yeah, but that's stale. That's what
I know.
CNN claim to be, and they're archaic too. So
I know.
I don't agree. I don't think we need fair and balance. What we do need is accountability and intelligence and responsibility. You don't have to be... I've never been balanced, but you can be fair. I don't think fairness and balance go together. In fact, I would argue most fair people are by definition unbalanced. I'm unbalanced. Borat was unbalanced. So maybe we should introduce a new term to this show.
Sure.
Fair and unbalanced. How about that?
Fair and unbalanced, but that doesn't mean biased, or does it?
It does mean bias, as long as you wear that on. I don't have a sleeve, but as long as you're honest about it, absolutely. Otherwise, you get these boring Americans who claim to be in the middle, and you know what they say in Texas: anyone in the middle is just roadkill. So there's nothing wrong with being opinionated. There's no one more opinionated than me, as long as you're honest about those opinions and accountable for them. So I don't think we should want to take opinion away from our media. We can add it, but it needs to be accountable and responsible and well produced and articulated by people who know what they're talking about. So what I'm putting together is a network of opinionated experts.
I love it. And you know, I think that, you know, you spoke about the word accountable. I was trying to like weave the thread. And I think the idea you would imagine, right, is accountable means admitting when you're wrong. It means admitting when you don't know the answer rather than bullshit your way through it. And there's a word for me, Andrew, that when I watch all of these pundits and commentators on television, it's like fingers on a chalkboard, and it's the word, and it's the word think. I think. And the one that then annoys me even more is, I think the American people want. I'm like, you don't know what the American people want, and your thoughts are irrelevant, my friend. I want to know what you know.
Yeah, we need to institute some sort of cosmic arrangement where anyone who ever says the American people are zapped and immediately sent to hell.
And it's not the hell where hell is frozen over.
It's real hell, yeah, hot hell.
Okay, so we are going to continue this conversation in the Zoom after show. I don't know whether I should. In fact, I tell you, I'm not going to.
No Jew. I mean, you're only allowing Jews, I hope, though, right?
I mean, you're going to get into so much trouble for that, and I better not, because
blame me, blame the Jews, blame me.
I'm blaming you, buddy. Let me tell you. So. This was Andrew Keen. I've reverted you to Contrarian, Nemesis, and Antichrist, you know, and non-Jew hater. Not Andrew Keen, best-selling author, keynote speaker, creator of How to Fix Democracy and presenter of Daily Keen on Show. Or maybe we just leave it at this, Andrew, which is Andrew Keen, the Dufka.
Yeah, that's it. That sums it up. Can I go to the bathroom, though, before we do this?
You can, in fact, you know what? Say goodbye, and then I'll see you in the Zoom after show. Say bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. That was fun. See you.
And that was Andrew Keen. If you want to shout at him, because he deserves it, right? If you want to disagree with him, if you want to ask him why he hates non-Jews so much, if you want to find out actually more about his network, there's so many reasons to do it. All you have to do is come to our Zoom after show. And for those of you that need the URL, you should know it by now. It's bit.ly/CoronaTV aftershow.com. I will be there in just a jiffy. Thank you, David Libby, and I will see you guys, if not in the after show, tomorrow for our final Friday show. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.